The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, and producer of this show, along with my co-host today, Otto Los and Paula Yule. Otto, of course, is our fabulous volunteer and all-around amazing senior, inspirational guy.
Thank you.
Paula, of course, and I work at the Department of Services for the Aging, where Paula is the deputy commissioner. And we do all things Project Independence, and we're glad to be back. It's been so long since we've been live together.
I hope we can do this.
I know. I felt so rusty this morning. I was like, my gosh, I hope we still got it.
Yeah, I hope so.
But this morning we are talking.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Stay tuned for the next hour. This morning we are talking to Dr. Francis Dalis, who is the Director of Clinical Training, the Director of Psychological Services Center, Associate Professor at Long Island University Post, Clinical Psychology Doctoral Program. And we are talking about something very exciting. LIU has a Psychological Services Center, and we're going to be talking about all things mental health. So we have a lot to cover in this hour, Dr. Dalis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's really lovely meeting you all. It's a really exciting opportunity that I can introduce you to a program that we've had here at LIU since 1990. We are the Psychological Services Center services Long Island University's clinical doctoral program, which we train students to become early psychologists. It's a 5-year program. And the Psychological Services Center is their second year in the program and their first practicum. Mm-hmm. And we have a whole host of services. So they do individual, group, family, couples therapy. We do it in person, or we can do it virtually. So we also provide services to the community. We can go into different various community centers and provide programming as far as mental health goes.
So this has multiple things going for it. Like if you're a graduate student here, you get the benefit of hands-on, really working in the world experience. Yeah. And the people who are on the other side of the coin are getting the benefit of people who are being trained in this world and can help them, hopefully.
Absolutely. And the program is a dual-oriented program. So we work from a cognitive behavioral and a psychodynamic model. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the students are supervised by licensed psychologists. Many of them are faculty members, and others are community psychological doctoral alum or other mental health professionals that supervise our students. So, yeah,
That's incredible. And now, with your center, I just, want to make sure everyone listening knows. So it services people of all ages?
We service as young as 4, okay. And really as old as we can find people that need services. Yeah. And we do it virtually as well. So if it's hard to come to campus, the center itself is located on the LIU campus in Lodge B, which is behind the admissions building, pretty centrally located. There's mass transit that comes. There's a bus that comes right into the campus. And as I said before, ever since COVID, we've been doing things virtually as well.
On a like a percentage basis, if you can do it, would most of the people who get counseling or therapy be students, or would they be from outside the campus?
So I would say about a third of our current clients are LIU students, but there is a Center for Healthy Living, so there is a student health organization on campus. So we really get them after the first few sessions. But the community piece to it, we have a lot of young children, and we do parent training, grandparent training. So I would say maybe 2/3 of our clients are community-based.
So how does the community find out about this service?
Well, I'm grateful.
She's like, that's why I'm here right now.
I'm grateful for this platform. We do outreach. Our students do the outreach, and we haven't really outwardly advertised. Mm-hmm. It's more word of mouth through other universities, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because you know what it is too. Because we talk about this, Paul and I, like with Project Independence, and two, it's it's like this fine line of getting the word out, but then like getting the word out too much, and like having, because you don't know. I mean, like, especially now. I mean, mental health. Luckily, we're in a time where people are more likely to seek out help and talk about it and stuff. So, it's really it's tough because you don't.
Well, I
want
mean,
too
looking
much.
at it from a perspective of different experiences, I believe just by observation that college years are difficult years for people. My view. And I look back at my own life. When I was 19, I was pretty stupid, to be honest about it.
Never, not my Otto.
Oh yeah.
I didn't think so at the time.
Let's say my life experience. And I was really not very naive, I don't think. But then again, 19 years old back when, you really didn't know too much. And a lot of times I believe people who go away to college or whatever, all of a sudden their mother and father are no longer watching and observing their behavior, if you will.
Sure.
So I could see where, I have witnessed it, frankly, with people in the family, where those years are tough years.
Yeah.
And they should be not tough, but I think they are. So
Well, because you know what it is, you don't like magically become an adult. Like you graduate high school and you have it like all together.
you never become an adult.
No, I mean I just turned 40. Let's say I still ask my mom for like everything. Like,
Right.
what do I do? What do I do? Is this right? No.
Right.
But I think it is. You're right. Like it's because you're kind of at this weird point. So now it's like, and especially when you do go away, it's like now you're like on your own, probably for the first time. A lot of times, So it's definitely a coming of age, time. You're trying to figure it out.
Well, I wound up in the military, but that,
that's where-
that's a different kind of college.
Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
certainly.
But it is a college.
It's certainly.
But there's so much push now to go to college. You know, it's just like the expectation is after high school, where are you going to go to college? And not everybody's ready for it, and it's not right for everybody.
Well, and I think there's a push nowadays that maybe not everybody should go to college.
No, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
There are other things that people can do that really are, you
Yeah.
can make a good living at,
Yeah.
like being a plumber or an electrician.
Yeah, things
No
we
question
need.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also providing services now has to be very challenging
Yeah.
between social media. I mean, have you found in your years of practice that there's a difference in people coming to see you that may have had, different ways of coping that maybe now are different,
The topography of mental health has changed. There is
Yeah.
no question about it. And there was a huge shift before and after COVID. Developmentally, every phase of development, there's a challenge.
Yeah.
We know this about, early infants and first parents. When you think about when you become a parent for the very first time, this is new.
This is-
right.
yeah.
And you're only ever a parent to one once. When you have a second child, then you're a parent
Right,
to two.
right.
And
It's
as that
different.
child develops through their phases, you're developing as a parent because it's the first time you've ever, had an infant, the first time you've had a school-age child, the
Right.
first time you've had a teenager.
Right.
And when you get to the college phase, one of the most difficult phases is not just adjusting to college, it's that first year after college. What do you do next?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Because that's what it's like. Really. Because at least you're just like, okay, I'm still
Right, it
kind
should
of
all-
in
it should
school,
all be okay
right?
now. I
Yeah.
should just go right into
Yeah.
the job of my dreams
Right.
and have
And
money.
it's not how it
and-
works. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's like the first year of, I just visited some grandsons and whatnot. And one of them's going to be a senior. And we talk, about, well, what are you going to do? And it's kind of like the last year of going into senior college.
Yeah.
He had no idea, and I can empathize because most people have no clue what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And you're breaking out into another, like you point out, different phase. And life is made up of phases. Frankly, I'm in a different phase. I mean, where do you go from here kind of phase.
Well, exactly. Your life changes and the circumstances of your life changes. So going back to your question about, well, what's changed in mental health and how has it changed across time? Well, what we were expected to do when we were going through school, or I was fortunate to go to college, and I was our first generation in my family to go to college. And it is more of an expectation
Right.
than a privilege to go these
Right.
days.
Right.
And the degree itself doesn't necessarily
Hold the same weight
hold the
even.
same
Right,
weight, right?
right.
So I love what you're saying as far as the trades and going back to the trades, because it's something that has been lost over the years. Right now with social media, with the 24-hour news cycle, it's so difficult to become regulated when you're hearing constant negativity, right? And what we're finding with our young people, it's hard for them to disengage with social media, and it's hard for adults to not engage with like what's going on in the world and listening to it 24/7. So that's part of the challenges that we're facing.
I mean, we talk about that here. If you are inclined to watch the news all day, there's no way you're not going to be very depressed when the day is over. So we always talk about, well, limit it, do a half an hour. And if you can handle a half an hour, you're all right. Even a half an hour can be.
Yeah, that's I think you're pushing it up.
Well, that's true. If you're on your computer,
It's
and you
gonna-
work on a computer, you have almost like a ticker tape that comes across your screen telling you all of the negative things. I mean, very rarely do you
see
get
positive, very rare.
I never thought about it quite like that, because I look back in my life, and we used to go to the movie theater on a Saturday, watch 25 cartoons,
Right.
and see movie tone news.
Right.
And that was your
Right.
exposure to the news.
Right.
And
Right. How different,
It was limited.
Right.
It was very different.
Yeah.
And now movie tone news is on all day long.
Right. And it's not, and it's also the kind of news.
Yeah.
well, that's,
The kind of news, and especially I'm thinking, young adults and, people coming into what am I going to do with my life. It just kind of feels dark, it feels
You know what it is too, and then it's the
scary.
other layer of because listen, as I mentioned, I just turned 40, and so when I was in high school and college, it was like beginning the social media stuff, right? And luckily, I say thank the Lord all the time, I was not in high school with social media, but I have my brother and I are 9 years apart, and so I just seeing him, and now forget it, even younger is even worse, but it's even with all the inundated, and it's just the comparison is really, and I could even find myself slipping into it. I'm an adult, and I could see and you always feel like you're not doing enough because everyone's posting the best, the highlight reel of their life,
right? Only the best.
Right? Let's and that's it should, and it could be fun, but it really takes a lot to put in perspective. Even as an adult, so I can't imagine a young person who's just coming to their own and seeing this, and you're just comparing yourself to every person in the world that you may not have seen if you didn't have social media.
Especially if you're already having psychological
Right,
difficulties,
absolutely.
or depression, or any of the things that you may have come into college with, or you have currently, that you were kind of told, don't let that be out, in the world.
No, and listen, I look at my friends' kids who literally, it sounds funny, come out just swiping. That finger is already, knowing they know how to get to YouTube, get to social media, and it's just a crazy thing to see because they're 2 years old. So I just can't imagine growing up.
I think the words perception is reality. You see enough stuff on social media, and you perceive it the way you perceive it. That's going to be the reality you're dealing with, and I can see where it'd be a tough thing to handle.
They're all challenging. I mean, when I grew up, we only had 7 channels. I'm dating myself.
Right. Oh,
right?
yeah.
And television.
You gotta get up and change that.
Right. And television went off. Programming ended.
Some noise on the screen.
Ended up.
Right.
Now it's forget it.
Well, there's 300 and something streaming channels, and you can be on television, on your social media, on your computer 24/7. And back in those days, even when there were catastrophic things happening in the world, we didn't see the imagery of it.
Right.
Right. And now we're getting the imagery, and we're getting it in real time.
Yeah.
So it's much different.
I mean, I go even further back than that. We didn't even have television when I started. It was radio.
Yeah.
No, and it's hard
And
because
a newspaper.
and it's because it's
And the
something.
newspaper was a week
right.
late, right?
Which was a couple of weeks behind usually.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the dust has already settled. But and I think that's because as you were saying, Dr. Dalis, it's you almost have to work not to be inundated, because like it just comes to you, as you were saying. I'll be on my laptop at work, not looking for the news, and as you said, that bar comes across, and so I could only imagine the people that are in school and young kids.
So your challenge then is to deal with people who are living in the environment we just described, frankly.
That is the challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, just helping a person stay grounded among the noise.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is very, very noisy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, even politically, there's a huge separation in the country, and it's a challenge. We service, LGBTQ plus, and
there's something totally different.
There's a lot of challenge in that arena right now.
So now, how does it work with the center? So if someone wants to make an appointment, is there like a wait time? Like, how does it all?
So we have a number that you can call. We have a website and social media presence right now. This is a unique time, right? So the center really runs from September through July because, as I said earlier, it's second-year doctoral students in training. So their practicum essentially ends in July, and then we start up again in September.
We're just going to pause you on that because we are going to take a short break. After the break, we will continue talking with Dr. Dalis all about the LIU's Psychological Services Center. You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio.
So I get this call from my grandma, and she's like,
"What's a podcast, and how much does it cost?"
So I tell her, podcasts are like radio shows, but you can download them on any device and listen to them anywhere at any time, and they're free. And then she says,
"I see, but where can you find good ones?"
And I'm like, go to wcwp.org/podcast and check out the lineup of original shows, or download any podcast app on your phone or tablet and search for LIU Studios. And she's all like,
"Oh, that sounds easy."
And then she asked me what an app is.
LIU Studios podcasts, available on any podcast app. Those little button things on your phone screen. Just ask your grandkids.
Welcome back to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Paula Ewell and Otto Los. We're going to jump right back in with Dr. Francis Dalis, who is from the LIU's Psychological Services Center, and we're talking all things about the center and mental health. And before the break, we were saying if someone is interested in scheduling an appointment, how does it go?
So we have a number that you can call, and it's 516-299-3211. We also have an email, which is relatively new, and I think...
Yes, so it's pscinfo@liu.edu. And of course, for any of this information, you could always call us over at 311, and we can get you connected to the center.
Well, also, could you just look up Psychological Services Center at LIU or something?
Yes, you can do any search engine. You should be able to find us.
You should. I did research, and so I can vouch that you can find it.
Yes.
LIU.
Correct.
Yeah.
So generally, you make the call, and within the next 48 hours, you get a call back, and there's an advanced level student that does a screening. So they'll ask you some basic questions because we are not an emergent center.
Yes,
right. So we do service people that are needing skills to cope and experiencing anxiety, maybe depression. But if it's a high risk case, so if someone is really suffering and self-harming or at risk for suicidality, we do not take those cases on, but we do help find resources for people that present that way. We were talking a little earlier about the notion of anxiety. Right? Years and years ago, we have a diagnostic manual that is a medical model, right? That's where we get our labels, right? And in the field of psychology, while we use the diagnostic manual as a tool, because if you're, looking to go through your insurance, you need to get a code.
You need that.
Yeah.
The Psychological Services Center, we don't accept insurance. We're a very low-fee clinic, so we slide. And the notion of the diagnosis isn't the most important factor in service, right? But when we talk about depression, anxiety, I mean, life can be stressful. And everyone is on a continuum, on a spectrum. So it's not as if people don't experience anxiety. We all do in one way or another. How we manage our anxiety, how we cope with our anxiety. Well, this is one of the things that we do in the center is assisting you to build your tools on how to manage.
Is that the
stress.
CBT? That's the cognitive.
Yeah.
You can do it both ways, right? So
okay.
the cognitive behavioral side
therapy,
is very much focused on your cognitions and your thinking traps and the negative thoughts that you hear in your mind every day. And we teach people how to challenge those thoughts. Is it a fact? Is it true? Can you think of a time that it wasn't true? And that's one of the interventions, because your thoughts inform the way you feel, inform your behavior. So that's the cognitive triangle. From a psychodynamic perspective, that's more about helping you gain insight on why you do what you do, why you act the way you do, and where the patterns come from. So, personally, I work from an integrative perspective, and we teach our students to work from both modalities. But one of our beliefs is that the way you're raised and the people that raise you and the things that you learn as you come through your life, how connected you are with your parents, how attuned your parents were at the early stages, develop what we call a secure attachment. And if for whatever reason there's not a secure attachment, meaning, your parents were under undue stress, there's intergenerational trauma, that could affect your internal working model and the way you view the world. So it could spill over to the relationship patterns that you have as you grow through the lifespan. So from a psychodynamic perspective, we assist people to learn about their patterns and about what it is that could potentially cause them to engage the same way over and over again.
Anxiety is a word that we were talking offline. When I was growing up, I don't remember ever hearing the word anxiety. And now I hear it all the time. A lot of kids, smaller kids, teenagers, they all go through anxiety. And it seems like most of them go through some kind of anxiety. And it also turns out that I also hear, because of that, a lot of medication being issued to children. And I just wonder how this whole thing developed. Like a part of it, what we talked about earlier in the show, is the accessibility to what's going on around you is really overwhelming. And I think that by itself can cause an anxiety about where is this world going to and whatever. But then on an individual level, there are other things that people run into which you could make a mountain out of. It could be nothing, like taking a test in 2 weeks or whatever, but it's your perception of that being a big mountain to climb. That stuff to me is very interesting. How do you contend with that?
So life is different.
Yeah.
Right? We all experience anxiety, and it was true even when we didn't name it as anxiety.
Yeah, you were still experiencing it.
And by the way, there's a healthy level of anxiety, because anxiety essentially is our adrenaline, our cortisol stress hormone that sets our alarms off, right? And it could put us in motion to get something done effectively and motivate us, or it could freeze. I mean, when you talk about what anxiety looks like and our cortisol level, you've heard fight, flight, freeze. Okay, so when you're under high levels of stress, how you have learned to cope with that stress, or what you know about that sort of situation, it kicks in automatically. You don't think about it, it just happens. So I mean, and one of the classic examples, if you're out camping and you're approached by a bear, we don't know exactly how to handle a bear, but I mean, whether that's make yourself really big and growl back at the bear or freeze, it's just our body does what it needs to do to protect us. So, and to your point, Otto, is when you're flooded with information and you can compare yourself to what other people identify with. I mean, look at the ads when you're watching television and the medication, the big pharma ads.
Half the ads are
majority.
I usually mute them. Right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mute
That's
the
what-
commercial.
No commercials, yeah.
But-
Well, and
but-
if you're allergic to this, don't take it.
well, how do you know if you're
Yeah,
allergic
right,
to
right.
it unless you
Take
take it, right? It's funny. I have the
Right,
same problem all the
right.
time. And you're not wrong. I mean, we're in a time where this is what our young people and our community hears day to day. I mean, if you're watching television, this is what you're hearing. We do medicate children. I mean, as psychologists, we don't have the ability to write prescriptions. The psychiatrists do. But the field of psychiatry has changed through the years because, back in the day when you would see a psychiatrist, yes, they have the ability to write a script, but they also did talk therapy.
Right.
And it's not the same
It wasn't
anymore.
automatic script, right.
Right. And it's challenging. When do you medicate a child and when don't you? Because the brain is developing and it develops rapidly.
Right.
And, you can disrupt the development of a
Right,
brain
right.
if you medicate too soon. And at the same time, there are chemical imbalances. We talk about anxiety, but let's talk about autism spectrum, right? We didn't know what
No,
autism
no
spectrum
way.
disorder was, and that's something that the DSM highlights and uses as a true spectrum right now.
Right,
That's what it's
right.
called. But there have always been people that think a little differently, that act a little differently, and we didn't identify
Right.
it.
It wasn't a disorder.
It wasn't a
spectrum.
disorder.
Right.
Right.
No, but they were treated poorly
Yes.
going back,
Yeah.
They did share challenges.
because of ignorance of people just not knowing, and accepting the fact that you're lucky you weren't born with a problem.
Yeah.
It's not a gift. It's nothing genius on your part. It's the fact that you were lucky.
Right.
You were born without it. Somebody, nobody asked for these things. you
That's
know?
true. And over the course of the years, there's a lot of research that's being done, and research fuels the different modalities that we use and the way we identify the different types of what we call disorders or challenges people face, right? So,
Well, I look back at my own life, and I've talked about this on the show. For some reason, back when I was like in my teen years, I guess it was later teen years, I remember getting a book, several books by Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, and another one about positive thinking. So I must have had a need then
to seek those books.
that I thought I was worrying too much, or maybe I was anxious and didn't know, you look back and I realized, why did I ever pick that book to read?
but you did.
Yeah.
You
I
picked
did.
up the
Right,
book
right.
and you functioned.
Yeah,
And
He's always ahead of the game, this Otto,
Well, I've always been interested in
Yeah.
attitude is a big thing, and this is all you have really, is your head
That's
and
the
what
truth.
goes on in there. Nobody really else knows completely what's going on up here except yourself, and then you don't always know either.
Well, that's a great point, because even if you seek mental health, your mental health counselor or your psychologist isn't going to know exactly what's going on in your mind. We're not an expert in the individual. You're the expert in your life.
Right.
All we can do is help you identify what it is that you're thinking about or how you're behaving and acting, and assist you in maybe learning tools to ease your suffering and function better.
Well, I think another thing is that people tend to, and I can talk again from personal experience, will tell you what you think that you want to hear. And maybe it's really far from what they really want to say, but they think, I
It's
want
like
to
the
hear
judgment
that.
piece, right?
Yeah,
So you're not.
I'm going to judge what they say.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that's probably a bad thing. You have to get over the fact that, no, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what you feel.
And that's a challenge, right? Because you do experience.
Well, it's your challenge.
Well, so one of the things that I tell an early clinician, right? If you were to do a social experiment and you were to sit in a coffee shop and just listen to what people say to each other, many times people listen long enough to hear what someone says, and stop and then say what's on their mind, not necessarily reciprocate the conversation.
Yes.
Right.
You've been amongst my family.
But it's human nature because we have busy minds.
Right.
And our minds are busier now because there are so many things that we're flooded with on a day-to-day basis. So do we think quicker? I mean, life is quicker, right? It's hard to be able to take a pause and take a breath.
Well, like to listen. Listening is not easy, all right? I was in sales all my life, and I've witnessed it thousands of times. Many salespeople just don't know when to shut up. You know, they don't listen to what somebody says. You know, like I don't need a thing like that. Oh, yeah, you do. I said, did you hear what they said? They don't need it. They don't want it. They don't need it.
Well, so that's a great point because we have a challenge in listening. I mean, it's
hard to teach too, isn't it? Like to have.
Yeah.
When you're teaching students, is that a challenge?
Well, you know, teaching. When I teach, because I do teach developmental psychology, I teach child and adolescent courses. I've taught family therapy. Teaching, I want to hear what a young person is thinking first, and giving the information. You're right, it is challenging to have them absorb and generalize the information. But one of the things I try and get across to young people, and this is with my children too, my children know that I say this all the time. If you listen long enough and you experience resistance, right? You're saying something and someone's rejecting what you're saying. It's not about trying to convince the person that you're right. It's about understanding what the objection is about. Right. So even in sales, right? And I did some time in sales before I came into the field of mental health. We were taught to go for the no and then understand what the no is about. Right? Because once you understand where the objection is or what the problems are, it's the same thing. You can help a person see it a different way. And often when it comes to anxiety and depression, one of the terms I use is helping a person flip the script, right? So we focus, it's human nature to focus on what's not going well. Right. And when you help an individual flip the script to seek out the things that they could agree are good, then maybe you can help them, gain different perspective and start looking for the things that are more positive in the course of a day. Because every day is not only negative.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and I believe, frankly, some perspectives are just, you can't change. That's real world. I know in your world, you hope you can change every perception, but I'm sure you have witnessed many, many perceptions that you can't change. And I don't know how you come over that mountain, because perception is reality, as I always say. If I think this is a bus, it's a bus, No matter what you tell me, it's a bus.
Well, and that, I hear what you're saying. And if I believed that, it would be hard to come to work, right?
Yeah, well,
I'm
saying, and that's not, I empathize with people like yourself. I actually, I grew up in a world where, oh no, you don't go for therapy, you don't go for counseling, you're weak,
That's true.
No, I ended up, they know my story. I had, my first wife died early.
I'm so sorry.
I married a lady whose husband died early. We ended up with 6 kids. I had 3, she had 3.
It's the Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch. There you
Did
go.
we need help? Yeah, we did. We didn't realize it until we got into it. And the kids were like 6 to 10 years old. So there was no manual that I could find. There was no Dale Carnegie book on this particular topic.
He's like, I looked for it too. Yeah.
So we ended up going for therapy, and I'm become an advocate ever since. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to get help, to figure out where you're at and to maybe change your perception.
Sure.
You
So,
know.
so what I'm hearing is that you successfully blended families of 6 children,
Yes.
and that is no small feat.
Oh, yeah.
Not at all.
No small feat.
It's not like the Brady Bunch.
and today, it's more common.
And they all get
Right,
along.
blended
and
family.
that-
Yeah.
Well, thank
It's
God,
a really
right?
nice-
They all get along.
Yeah.
You've done the work, right?
Yeah.
So when you, but you sound like the type of individual that if you're not feeling 100% and you need assistance, you went ahead and looked for those self-help books, and you went ahead and sought, some guidance on how do we do this? How do we blend this beautiful family that you have? And that is well beyond the time.
Right. That's what I always say.
When
Right.
you were looking for that sort of assistance, it's more commonplace now, and mental health services. It's not quite as stigmatized.
Yeah.
Still, some certain cultures are not necessarily, looking to bare their soul to a stranger. Right. That was. What was private,
Like airing
was
your dirty
private,
laundry,
right? Airing
right,
your dirty
yeah.
laundry. I grew up in a similar situation. You didn't share your most private secrets, but the world has changed, and people do value their mental health services. So people are seeking assistance in a world where we need assistance.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and after the break, we will continue talking with Dr. Frances Dalis about LIU Psychological Service Center and mental health, and just do a little mental health counseling for ourselves, Otto. I think that's what Otto's doing over here. You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
Welcome back to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host, Paula Ewell and Otto Los. And we're jumping right back in with Dr. Fran Dalis about mental health and LIU Psychological Services Center. So before the break, we were talking about kind of the process of, scheduling. Now, if somebody wants to come 3 times a week or something, like, is there any limit on the amount of service they can do, or how does that kind of work?
There really isn't a limit. We service the person where they are. We meet them where their needs are, and we develop the protocol and the treatment plan around what the presenting problems are. So yes, you can come 3 times a week in a dynamic frame, or you can come once a week, or you can come once every other week.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the need of the client.
Oh, that's great. That's, and I just love that, you do offer, of course, the virtual. We had mentioned it in the first segment. I think that's important too. And, we always try to, during COVID, the show, we were strictly virtual, and we would always say it was our group therapy, right? We were all from our house, and we were dealing with it in real time. We would sit there and, kind of talk our feelings out. And
It got us through COVID.
It really did. It was really our own therapy, and then we would occasionally, educate the public, but it was really it was so much. And I always think that that's kind of a silver lining that did come out of COVID, because I think that mental health kind of got more of a forefront during that time. And, I just saw it for myself, more people were talking about it. And as I had mentioned, my little nieces and nephews, go to school now and are aware of mental health, and they're little tiny things, talking about, kind of, and they're aware of, like, just prioritizing that as equally as important as your physical health. And so I do think that what was good about COVID and this virtual thing is that it did kind of connect people in ways that, you might not have been connected, especially, even seniors. We were saying a lot of our seniors who were not tech savvy by any means during that time, were able, Zoom was an easy enough platform, and they kind of had no choice. That was their only way to connect. But I do see, a lot of our programs kind of continued a virtual component, because it's easier for people.
If you think about it, you're working with the person who has an issue, whatever it might be. But people like who theoretically don't have an issue really should learn more about and get some empathy about people who do have problems. Try to understand, and don't call them a whack job or whatever,
true.
like derogatory stuff that people are quite capable of doing, which doesn't help anybody who has a problem, and frankly, it doesn't help yourself either, because it makes you a notch below, in my judgment. You really have to learn, if you think you're one of the solid people, learn about the fact that you're not so hot. It's your
Well,
luck.
that's what's great that you said, you do family counseling
Right.
and group counseling, because I do think that is so huge.
Which comes,
in that
that
kind of
could cover the
situation.
other
Yeah.
side at the same time.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
What your input would be. So when we work with seniors and our staff is going out and evaluating, and frequently we're going to see things that may seem like loneliness, but is actually more depression, and
Yeah.
we get more history and what's going on. And what would you suggest for our social workers and nurses to help in a dialogue with someone, to help someone understand that if we accepted some counseling or a little bit more mental health services, that they may feel better? What the resistance, I think, is the question.
So, to get a basic understanding of what goes on at that advanced age, right? As we talked a little earlier, we talk about developmental psychology. As we age, our crystallized knowledge is more prevalent than our fluid reasoning. And your body systems change, right? So the things you were capable of aren't so easy, and the world is changing, right? So the generations, and they get further and further apart. So here we're a generation of using social media, and kids are all over the internet, and you're here getting older, not knowing how to use technology.
Right.
So the challenge we face with older individuals, right, is first understanding what it is that they perceive is going on in their life, whether they believe they need assistance or not. We're not forcing a person to tell them that they need assistance. And if they are lonely, or you're asking whether or not you can determine is loneliness depression, recognizing what's going on around them. I mean, in this phase of development, you could be losing people, the people that are close to you.
Very common. And losing a lot of different things in your life.
And losing the ability
Yes.
of doing certain things. Maybe you have this family system. It's challenging because, I mean, how did you raise your children? Are your children close? Are they checking in on you? Are you connected in a community? All of these, different facets of a person's life could give you an indication on whether or not they're depressed or, just feeling down. Connectedness is important, and respect is important. So above and beyond all, mutual respect, respecting their opinion, respecting their position, what it is that they think they need or they may or may not be identifying with. That's I think first and foremost, not dismissing what they think they need and how they are conceptualizing what's going on around them.
Yeah, because that's what we usually start. When we see there's resistance, could be a strong word, but we may go in and explain, nurses and social workers, what it is we can help with. Just generally, here's what we can help with, and we've talked about this before, but it might take 2, 3, 4, a dozen calls. How are you doing? I'm just checking in. And really, like you said, the listening, I'm always interested in how our clinicians and our staff, how are we listening?
Yeah.
Because that's where the respect comes in, I think. And I think most people really want to talk about themselves, really want to talk about
There's
their
no question
memories.
about it. Yeah.
And, even hard memories, good memories. So there's some basic questions we can ask that will elicit, this happened to me. And you can see from someone, if they're talking, this is a good feeling for them. But, at times the social workers will come back and just say, I just don't know how to get in there. I just want to keep
them
trying.
Sometimes. Because frankly, I witness a lot of this phase. I'm 88 years old, all right? There are people around me who are either younger or older, and I've lost a lot of people who are younger. So every day I say, okay. I look in the obituaries. I see a lot of people going down who are under my age. So, I mean, you get to a point in your life where you are where you are, and
Yep.
and you got to kind of count what you have
Right.
and not what you don't have.
Right.
I used to be a good athlete. I'm not going to play basketball anymore.
But you still play golf.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I
you're
still
still
play
an
golf and I
athlete
bowl.
in your
yeah.
own, and you
yeah,
bowl.
but I happen to also be very fortunate.
Yeah. Not
Some
quite.
of it is because, yes, I try, I walk, I do a lot of walking. But on the other hand, there are other things that you can get, which I've had a couple of, but you can get them and you can't do anything about
Right,
it.
right. Yeah.
So self-pity doesn't go far.
Right.
Like I use the phrase, don't get on the pity pot because nobody cares, all right?
Right.
You
Well,
know?
you get on it, get off it very fast.
Yeah,
Get
I
off
mean,
it as fast
I
as
mean,
you
the
can.
truth of the matter is, whether we like the idea or not, most people really don't care. All right, if you're on the pity pot, you're on the pity pot by yourself. All right,
Yeah.
so you might as well try
Right.
not to be on
Right.
that pot.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you might be better off. But that's easy to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
No,
know.
Otto, you're an extremely optimistic
Right.
Yeah.
and healthy, mentally healthy person.
But I think I've worked at that. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Sure
is
you have.
work.
It's
you know,
clear
yeah.
that you have.
Yeah.
And your perspective, I mean, this perspective to bring to other seniors in your community, this is a beautiful perspective to bring. Not everyone comes
Yeah.
to this age in the same way.
Right.
Eric Erickson's stage of integrity versus despair is what he calls it, right?
Yeah.
And what does it mean, really? At a certain age, you start taking a look back on your life,
Yeah.
and you take stock. Did I do all the things that I set out to do? Did I leave, a positive legacy? Are there people that will remember me? What was my contribution? And the people that have families that they blended, and you have 6 beautiful children, and have healthy relationships, and can think back, okay, they lived a life that they did something that was meaningful for them,
Right.
in as far as where they worked or what they did. That's where you find integrity.
Yeah.
But for your social workers that go into these homes and feel like they don't know how to get in, one of the things they can do is just notice what's around.
Right.
Are there photos?
environment, yeah.
Right. Are there photos of people? They could, comment on a photo and maybe evoke a conversation around what the person chooses to display in their home, rather than ask a question, because questions are tough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But noticing something
Yeah.
and commenting on it in a positive way could maybe draw a person to a place where they feel
Very
comfortable.
good advice. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and everybody has different personalities.
It's true.
Like I like my self time, but I do like to be with people also. And some people in their younger years are more into their
Introverted,
self time. So when you get older, then you're going to have self time. Period.
That's true.
Because that's how you lived your life. And I guess you have to learn how to contend with the fact that this is what you chose, and okay, so that's what you chose. So let's go forward from there.
Yeah.
You know.
I think what Otto said, and I think about this because we've talked about this before. We try and maintain positivity, right? Like I actively work to do that, and it's work. And I think that that's an important thing for people to know, that it's not, we said it'd be great if you woke up, like a Disney movie, there's birds are chirping, I'd love to wake up that way. But you really have to work on it, right? And I think that that's why it's so important for all the listeners of all ages, and that's why to talk to someone, right? And it's all about getting the tools. This isn't like some magic wand that you could wave and everyone, you're just so happy. And my family were very close. I grew up in a 2-family household. My aunt with her kids were upstairs, her 3 kids, and I was downstairs, with my mom and my brother and my dad. And we left because it's a perfect experiment to just see, we grew up in the same house. And it's like, there's
Good way to
so
put it.
different.
Experiment.
It's just every, the personalities and stuff and how people react to things. And I see my cousins, handle things differently and, go through different stuff. And it's just an interesting thing to witness. And I was just talking this with my mom, because luckily, we have a very close relationship and constantly talk about our feelings. We're not ones to hold back. But I do think, it's just we were talking about how hard it is, and like so many people will just complain about all the negatives, and it's easy to do, it's easier to be like, oh, I'm giving up, this sucks, and it does take work, but I want anyone listening, this is why it's important to go to, a center like what you're doing, offer, or take advantage of that, or pick up that book. We are fortunate to be in a time where you're able to have access to more resources and these toolkits. Every time I do our newsletter, I try and put some kind of mental health toolkit thing in it, because there's really some, golden nugget tools that you can take out there. And
I have some of them stuck up on the wall.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Just to refresh my memory. I think you need it.
That's what I said. I mean, look, I'm a
very
walking,
special.
if anyone's watching the video, I have a smile
just have to
less
read.
shirt on. I'm a walking, manifestation right here.
We're on radio, but we will be on TV
right, you
as
can
well.
watch us on YouTube,
but
right.
you have a shirt, a sweatshirt on that says "Smile more, worry less." Easy to say, but it's a good thing to go by. If you can.
Yeah.
You're going to have your bad days. There's
but I think
it.
that's why it's so important to, meet with,
but you need help
a professional.
sometimes, so that's why.
To teach you, because, and I always say to my, I come from a very worrisome family. My mom, we always say, is just like the height of, she's like a sponge. It takes everyone's problems in. So that's my mom, right? So we were saying that, and what always stuck with me is because, as I said, it's work, and, I try and read things, and, and I tell her this all the time, when you get these intrusive thoughts, you have to, like, just work in your brain to not to think of something else, because even if you're like, I'm not thinking about this anymore, because this is my mom always do. I'm like, yeah, but you just keep saying you're not thinking about it, but you're thinking about it.
So that's the thinking part.
Yeah. So like you're still thinking about the thought, even though so. But it's back to my original point, was that these things take time and work, and I want people to be a little gentle on themselves that are easy. It's not like everyone is walking around just has it together.
Right.
So it's I think an important kind of message.
I'm really happy you said be gentle with yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because self-help and self-realization, it's not easy to think about, I need somebody's assistance. And I would hate for someone to believe they've made major mistakes, right? Worry is a real concern.
Yeah.
And your ability to stay in the moment and identify the things that are positive in the moment. Like, for instance, this conversation we're having. This is a wonderful opportunity that you've provided for me, right? And I'm grateful for it. And if you can recognize something in the moment that is positive, you're going to worry. I mean, the minute you become a parent, you worry about your children. You can't help it, right? You can't help it. But even little people, I mean, and I call them little people. My students laugh at me that I call children little people.
Yeah, because
and
they
not
are.
necessarily
They are.
They're little people. You could have a little person that worries just out of the gate, that's concerned about whether or not they're going to fall, or their toys are going to get broken, or what have you. And caring for a person that has a worry, be kind. Be kind to yourself, be kind to your family, be kind to your friends.
Right. It's a good starting point, right? It's something that I think we all could do, because Otto's famous saying, and I will say, you could only eat an elephant one bite at a time. One of my favorite Otto sayings.
Well, self-perception, how do you perceive yourself without being egotistical? But really, most people have something good about them that they should try to perceive.
I like that Otto said most people.
Well, I mean, but again, you used the word self-help before. Looking back, I guess, with those books and I still will look at things like when I was in sales, I treated sales like a profession. And I looked up and I sucked up everything I could learn on the way. And, you have to work at yourself.
You do. And understanding others.
Yeah.
I mean, sales is very much about understanding the needs of the person that you're servicing, right? And so it's not unlike therapy in a way, because you have to listen.
Yeah.
You have to listen to
and that was a big thing. I was in management eventually and whatnot. We'd go on calls and with other people, and we'd go out and you do the curbside evaluation of the call. And I was always business to business sales, system stuff.
Okay.
And it would be out in the curb, and they asked me, I'm the manager, and they asked me, how did it go? I said, it really didn't go very well. I said, you didn't listen to anything that person said. All you wanted to do was tell them about how great this water bottle was, and it has a white cap on
Right,
it.
right.
And, you know, and the guy said right at the beginning he doesn't drink water.
Right. So then, like, right.
Yeah. So, you know, listening is not easy. I admit myself, I mean, I got to write stuff down so I can't jump right in and interrupt you all the time.
Yeah, see, but you're working at it. So I think on that note, it's listen more, be a little kind, right? The overall message. You could start there, everyone's homework assignment for the weekend. I'd like to thank Dr. Fran Dalis for joining us and learning all about Long Island University's Psychological Services Center. And if you want to get in touch with them, you can call 516-299-3211. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Very
so much
helpful.
for
It was
inviting
wonderful.
me. I mean, this was wonderful. It's
Thank
lovely
you.
meeting you all.
You're listening to Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio.